How much longer can Mary Brown keep playing nice while Cody keeps pushing every boundary she has left this week? Everything changes because Mary's patience has officially snapped and her friends are done watching her get walked over. What happens next might finally expose the truth behind Cody's control and Mary's quiet rebellion. Stay tuned, because this is the turning point no one saw coming. It all begins with a single question that cuts deeper than anything else. How much longer are we going to do this? How much longer until you finally realize that the person you are trying to be kind to is the same person who keeps taking advantage of your kindness, and yet you keep trying to be the nice one. You keep hoping that maybe this time will be different, but deep down, you know it won't be. Mary Brown has been caught in this endless loop for years, always trying to please Cody, always trying to maintain peace. Even when peace meant silencing her own truth, and the moment Jen looks at her and says, "It's time to end the nice girl era," you can feel the tension shift. It's no longer just another scene. It's a warning shot, fired straight into the heart of their long broken dynamic. Jen is that friend who has seen it all, and she's finally done watching Mary shrink herself to make Cody comfortable. She gives her a 6-week ultimatum, 6 weeks until the buyer is locked in 6 weeks, until Mary stops pretending that kindness will change a man who thrives on control, and 6 weeks until the era of being polite officially ends. Because if this buyer deal doesn't go through, and if Cody still keeps stalling, then the attorney is coming in, and there will be no more soft smiles or careful words. The conversation feels different this time. The air is heavier, like Mary is finally seeing the cracks that everyone else saw long ago. Jen pushes her. She says, "You don't control me." And she makes Mary repeat it over and over until it starts to sound real, until the words stop feeling like a fantasy and start sounding like freedom. Mary laughs nervously, but underneath it, there's something shifting. Something waking up for years. She has been made to believe that standing up for herself would mean losing everything. But now she's realizing that maybe losing Cody isn't the end. Maybe it's the beginning of getting herself back. Jen's voice is calm, but powerful. She's teaching Mary the art of confrontation, the same art that Cody has mastered, but used to manipulate. Now it's Mary's turn to learn it, not to hurt, but to reclaim her own story. This is the same Mary who sat through humiliating conversations, the same Mary who watched her husband move on emotionally and spiritually while she stayed frozen in hope. But today there's a flicker of rebellion and the audience can feel it building. We've watched her take the blame for years. She became the scapegoat, the convenient target for all the family's frustration. Because it was easier to blame her than to challenge him, and in their world, questioning the man was forbidden. You couldn't defy the authority of the household. So every sigh, every bit of anger, every disappointment was redirected at Mary, and she carried it all silently until she didn't anymore. Now Jen is pulling her out of that silence. Every word is like unlocking another piece of herself. She's learning that she doesn't have to smile through pain. She doesn't have to nod while being dismissed. She can actually look him in the eye and say, "You don't control me," and mean it. There's something almost cinematic about watching her rehearse those words, like she's preparing for the biggest scene of her life. It's not just a confrontation. It's a reckoning, and as the tension builds, the audience starts to sense that maybe Mary is finally ready to stop being the version of herself that Cody molded. She's about to flip the narrative on its head. Because for the first time, she's not waiting for him to change. She's preparing to walk away without looking back. But before that can happen, we still have 6 weeks. 6 long weeks for everything to unravel. And in the world of sister wives, 6 weeks is enough time for everything to explode. The 6 weeks that follow become a slow burn of realization for Mary. Every conversation with Jen feels like a rehearsal for a final confrontation. She doesn't know when it's coming, but she can feel it drawing near. It's in the way her voice trembles when she practices her lines. It's in the way she looks away when she says, "You don't control me," because deep down she knows that saying it to Jen is easy, but saying it to Cody will take everything she has left. She's been conditioned for years to stay quiet, to take responsibility for every argument, to apologize even when she wasn't wrong. And now, as she starts to untangle herself from that pattern, she's realizing how much of her identity has been built around keeping him calm. She's remembering all the times she waited for his approval that never came, and all the moments she let herself believe that being patient would earn her love that was never given. And when Jen tells her to stop waiting, to stop hoping, and to start acting, There's a flicker of defiance in her eyes that we haven't seen in seasons. It's the look of someone who's tired of being silenced, tired of being told that she's the problem, when all she ever did was try to hold the family together. And while Jen cheers her on, Mary's fear still lingers because she knows what happens when women in their world stand up to the man they get iced out. They get ignored for months like Janelle was after. That massive fight with Cody. 3 months of silence, 3 months of pretending the other person doesn't exist. That's the punishment for disobedience. And Mary knows it too well. She's lived it before she's been through the emotional cold. Wars and the awkward family gatherings where she was treated like an outsider. And yet she stayed. She stayed because she thought maybe one day he'd see her again. Maybe one day he'd look at her the way he used to. But that day never came now. The tables are turning. Jen's voice cuts through the hesitation. Like a blade, she tells Mary to practice being angry, to practice saying what she really wants to say, the things she's kept buried for too long. "You do not control me," she says again, this time with less fear and more conviction. It's not perfect, but it's progress. And when Jen laughs and tells her to try it without the smile, something shifts. It's not about aggression, it's about reclaiming authority, about no longer apologizing for existing, and that's when the energy changes. Mary starts to imagine what it would feel like to actually say these things to Cody, to look him in the eye, and finally break the cycle. Because what's left to lose at this point, her reputation, has already been dragged, her story rewritten by others, her loyalty dismissed, and her kindness mocked. There's no peace left to protect, only herself. And maybe that's enough for once. Jen knows that Mary needs to feel that anger to process the grief that comes with realizing how much time she's lost waiting for someone who was never coming back. She doesn't just need to say, "You don't control me." She needs to believe it, to breathe it into every part of her life. And as they talk, the humor starts slipping in. Jen teases Cody's hair and they both laugh. It's not just a joke, it's catharsis. Because behind the laughter, there's truth. Cody's vanity has always been a symbol of his control. The way he hides behind that ridiculous hairstyle as if it's his crown, his identity, his shield. And Mary laughing about it for the first time feels like rebellion. It's like she's finally allowed to mock the thing. She once had to praise his hair, the thing everyone was supposed to admire. Even when it looked nothing like what he thought it did, it becomes a metaphor for the whole relationship. Everyone around him pretended everything was fine because that's what he demanded. And now Mary's done pretending. She's starting to see through the illusion. She's starting to see him for what he is. Not a leader, not a husband. Not the man she once loved, but a man terrified of losing control. And when that control starts slipping, it's going to get messy. That's the tension building underneath every smile, every rehearsal, every joke about his hair. Because when the confrontation finally comes, it won't be about the words. It'll be about all the years she lost and all the strength she's finally ready to reclaim. By the time those 6 weeks reach their end, there is a quiet stillness around Mary that feels almost unnatural. Like the air before a storm, she has stopped second-guessing herself. She has stopped asking if being kind will fix things she knows. Now that it never will, Jen's lessons have settled deep into her bones, and for the first time in years, Mary is speaking from a place of power. Not fear. Every rehearsal, every whispered, "You don't control me," has become a mantra, a shield against the years of manipulation and silence. And as she stands on the edge of finally confronting Cody, the audience can feel it. The suspense is thick, because we've been waiting for this moment since the beginning of the season. The moment when Mary stops playing the peacekeeper and finally becomes the storm herself. What's haunting is that she isn't yelling, she isn't screaming. There's a calm to her resolve that's more powerful than any argument she's ever had. She's steady and unshaken because she's already decided what comes next, and that is what makes this moment so tense. The power has shifted, and Cody doesn't even see it coming. He's too used to being the one who dictates the terms of every conversation, the one who walks away and leaves the silence behind as punishment. But this time, when he storms off, she doesn't follow. She doesn't plead. She just watches him go. And that's when you realize that this isn't about revenge, it's about release. All the years of waiting, all the sacrifices, all the tears have led her to this exact point where she can finally breathe again, where she doesn't have to seek permission to exist. And that realization hits harder than any argument could. In a way, the real confrontation isn't even with Cody, it's with herself. The version of Mary who believed that she wasn't enough without his approval. the version who thought that love meant endurance and silence. She's saying goodbye to that. Woman forever, and it's liberating in a way that feels raw and real. There's something poetic about watching someone take back their voice after years of living in someone else's shadow. Jen's proud of her, but she also knows this is only the beginning. Because after you break free, the real challenge is staying free. But for now, we watch as Mary reclaims every piece of herself with small moments that feel monumental. The first time she looks at him without flinching, the first time she doesn't fill the silence, the first time she lets him walk away without chasing him. It's quiet but powerful, and that's why it's so gripping, because it's not explosive drama. It's emotional victory. And when she laughs about his hair, again, it's no longer nervous. It's confident, like she's finally seeing how absurd it all was. The endless praise, the pretense, the worship of an image that never matched reality. And now she can laugh because she's no longer trapped in it. The irony is that Cody has no idea that he's already lost control, because he's still stuck in the illusion that Mary will always wait, that she will always bend, but not this time. This time she's already gone in spirit before she even leaves, physically. And that's what makes this ending so powerful. It's not loud, it's quiet, but devastating for him and healing for her. Jen was right. It was never about being the nice girl. It was about remembering that being nice doesn't mean being silent. And now Mary knows that she doesn't have to play the role anymore, because she's writing a new one for herself, a role where she's not the scapegoat, not the background, not the forgotten wife, but the woman who finally walked away and didn't look back. And as the screen fades, you're left with that haunting first question: how much longer are we going to do this? The answer now is simple: not a moment more. In the end, what makes Mary's story so powerful is not that she finally stood up to Cody, but that she found the strength to stop waiting for him to change. Her silence was never weakness, it was survival, and now her voice has become the very thing that sets her free for years. She carried the weight of being misunderstood, of being painted as the problem, while quietly enduring the emotional isolation that came with it. But the truth is, she was never the cause. She was the consequence of someone else's control. And that realization is what transforms everything. Watching her now feels like watching someone wake up after a long sleep. The fear that once held her back no longer has a hold. The woman who once whispered her boundaries now speaks them with confidence, and that change is magnetic. It draws you in because it's real and raw and long overdue. Mary's evolution is a reflection of what so many people experience when they finally decide that peace built on suppression isn't peace at all. It's exhaustion, the moment she lets go of being the nice girl. The moment she stops apologizing for existing in her own life is the moment the story changes forever. And in that quiet strength, there's a lesson that goes far beyond reality television. It's about how control often disguises itself as love, how manipulation wears the mask of leadership, and how sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop explaining yourself to people who benefit from misunderstanding you. Cody's world thrives on power, but Mary's strength was never in controlling others, it was in reclaiming herself, and that's what makes her journey so compelling. Because it's not about winning, it's about walking away from the game entirely. When Jen told her to practice saying, "You don't control me," it wasn't just a line for television. It was a declaration of freedom, the kind that comes from years of being silenced, and finally realizing that you don't need permission to exist. It's symbolic, it's emotional, and it's exactly why audiences are glued to this moment. They're not just watching a breakup, they're watching a transformation unfold in real time. And it's breathtaking to witness every laugh, every eye roll, every subtle act of defiance becomes part of her liberation arc. And by the time she's able to joke about his hair, it's not petty, it's poetic. It's proof that she's no longer carrying the weight of his opinion on her shoulders, because she's finally light enough to laugh again. The beauty of this ending is that it doesn't tie everything up neatly. It leaves space for the unknown, for the possibility of who Mary becomes next when she's no longer trapped in his orbit. And that's what makes it hopeful, not tragic. The story closes where it began, with the question, how much longer? But now it's not a plea, it's an answer. Mary isn't asking anymore. She's declaring it. She's done, she's free. And for the first time in a long time, she doesn't need his permission to move on. She just does, and that's the real victory, the quiet kind that lasts long after the cameras stop rolling.